Today, we are on day 14 of the chronological Bible in a year. Take a breath and take a moment to celebrate that you have set this time aside to hear God's word. Let's begin. So we'll be going back and forth a little bit between Genesis and Chronicles again so that we don't miss any words. From Genesis chapter 37. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had lived as a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a multicolored tunic. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him, and they could not speak to him on friendly terms. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he had yet another dream, and informed his brothers of it, and said, "Behold, I have had yet another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He also told it to his father as well as to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream you have had? Am I and your mother and your brothers actually going to come to bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are your brothers not pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "I will go." Then he said to him, "Go now, and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring back word to me." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." Then the man said, "They have moved from here, for I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. When they saw him from a distance, and before he came closer to them, they plotted against him and put him to death. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Now then, come and let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'A vicious animal devoured him.' Then we will see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands by saying, "Let's not take his life." Then Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, so that later he might rescue him from their hands to return him to his father." So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the multicolored tunic that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, without any water in it. Then they sat down to eat a meal. But as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, with their camels carrying labdanum, resin, balsam, and myrrh. on their way to bring them down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then some Midianite traders passed by. So they pulled him out and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. So they brought Joseph into Egypt. Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his garments. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go?" So they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in blood. And they sent the multicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's tunic or not." Then he examined it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." So Jacob tore his clothes and put on a sackcloth undergarment over his waist and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and his daughters got up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "Surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. Genesis chapter 38. And it came about at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adulamite whose name was Hira. Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite woman whose name was Shua, and he took her as a wife and had relations with her. And she conceived and gave birth to a son and named him Then she conceived again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan. She gave birth to yet another son and named him Shelah. And it was at Chezib that she gave birth to him. Now Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, "Have relations with your brother's wife, and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up a child for your brother." Now Onan knew the child would not be his, so when he had relations with his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground, so that he would not give a child to his brother. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, so he took his life also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law, Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought, "I am afraid that he too may die like his brothers." So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. Now after a considerable time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And when the time of mourning was ended, Judah went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And Tamar was told, "Behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she removed her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in the gateway of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was growing up, and she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he assumed she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here now, let me have relations with you." And he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What will you give me that you may have relations with me?" And he said, "Therefore, I will send you a young goat from the flock." Then she said, "Will you give a pledge until you send it?" He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" And she said, "Your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So she gave them to her and had relations with her, and she conceived by him. Then she got up and departed, and removed her veil, and put on her widow's garments. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. He asked the people of her place, saying, "Where is the temple prostitute who was by the road at Enaim?" But they said, "There has been no temple prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I did not find her." And furthermore, the people of the place said, "There has been no temple prostitute here." Then Judah said, "Let her keep them, otherwise we will become a laughingstock. After all, I sent this young goat, but you did not find her." Now it was about 3 months later that Judah was informed, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has prostituted herself, and behold, she is pregnant by prostitution." Then Judah said, "Bring her out and have her burned." It was while she was being brought out that she sent word to her father-in-law, saying, "I am pregnant by the man whom these things belong." She also said, "Please examine and see whose signet ring and cords and staff are these." And Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not have relations with her again. It came about at the time she was giving birth, that behold, there were twins in her womb. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth, that one baby put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But it came about, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. Then she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." So he was named Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and he was named Zerah. From 1 Chronicles chapter 2. The sons of Judah were Onan, and Shelah. These three were born to him by Bathshua the Canaanitess. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so he put him to death. His daughter-in-law Tamar bore him Perez and Zerah. Judah had 5 sons in all. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Zerah were Zimri, Ethan, Haman, Calcol, and Dara, 5 of them in all. From 1 Chronicles 2. The son of Ethan was Azariah. Genesis chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. And he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and became his personal servant. And he made him overseer over his house, and put him in charge of all that he owned. It came about from the time he made him overseer in the house, and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. So the Lord's blessing was upon all that he owned, in the house and in the field. So he left Joseph in charge of everything that he owned, and with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and it came about after these events that his master's wife had her eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Sleep with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put me in charge of all that he owns. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" Though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. Now it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the people of the household was there inside. So she grabbed him by his garment, saying, "Sleep with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of the household and said to them, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to make fun of us. He came in to me to sleep with me, and I screamed. When he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside." So she left his garment beside her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with these words, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought to us came in to me to make fun of me. But when I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Now when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, "This is what your slave did to me," his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him, and gave him favor in the sight of the warden of the prison. And the warden of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The warden of the prison did not supervise anything under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and the Lord made whatever he did prosper. Thank you for listening. I pray that the seed of God's word will be planted in your heart and will continue to grow.